I want to share a story with you about the time I played guitar on acid. It felt like I truly embodied the psychedelic spirit of Jimi Hendrix. It was nothing short of a wild, mystical trance, a true flow state full of elemental forces and spiritual insights. This was only one part of a life-changing experience that I had on LSD, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in this video too. This was the experience that caused me to dedicate myself to expressing this psychedelic mystery through my music, my art, and more recently through this YouTube channel. Terence McKenna once remarked that the LSD and rock and roll of the 1960s was like a failed alchemy.
In the 60s then, LSD was not sufficient, even coupled with rock and roll. It only brought oppression. It was like a failed alchemy.
Now, Carl Jung viewed alchemy as more than just the crude material process of turning lead into gold. It's also symbolic in nature, where the transformation of the materials mirrored that of the alchemists themselves. The inner work and the outer work were the same process. They were transforming their spirit and mind into a more whole and complete form, as symbolized by the Philosopher's Stone. It's very much about the union of opposites, conscious and unconscious, instinct and transcendence, creation and destruction. So I got to experience this American alchemy firsthand, and it was me who was transformed by it. So let's set the scene here a little bit. I had taken 2 hits of acid and was having the most life-changing experience of my life. Visionary vistas of staggering beauty, cosmic consciousness expanding my mind and perception to the size of galaxies, and a kundalini awakening just to top it all off. LSD, by putting your serotonin receptors in a chokehold, lasts for 12 hours. So about halfway through the trip, me and my buddies go up to the storage room where we were having band practice with my band Sunrise and Ammunition. We were in the middle of writing our first album at this time, so this was really just part of our daily routine at this point. We get to the room, we fire up the amplifiers, put on the guitars, and what I didn't anticipate is the way I would perceive my familiar music equipment in an utterly unfamiliar way. Everything felt strange. Not in a bad way, just that the ordinary was no longer taken for granted. I remember looking at the fretboard of my guitar, which has 6 strings and about 21 different frets for you to play different notes, and I saw it like a medium to the infinite. Within this limited amount of notes on the fretboard was an unlimited combination of potential notes. Given the cosmic state of mind I was in, this was profound and exciting, like a blank canvas practically begging you to paint on it. Once I turned on my amp, I just kind of stood there for a second, marveling at how strange and unfamiliar everything felt. They say that psychedelics can decondition your mind and reduce the dulling effect of the been there, done that of the mind. The same was true with this, like I was perceiving this thing I do every day in a completely new and novel way. Then we started playing, and my focus shifted from what I was playing to what I was feeling on the inside. And I felt like my internal state of being was being manifested out, and the shift of focus changed to what was inside of me, and I needed to express that. The first thing that grabbed me was the feedback. For those of you who don't know, feedback is what happens when you have an electric guitar or any kind of electric instrument and it's turned up pretty loud. And with guitar, you can have that loud, crunchy, distorted sound that rock music is known for. So what happens is that the sound goes from the guitar to the speaker and then out the speaker back into the guitar, and it creates an infinite loop, and then that loop starts to oscillate and it creates this loud, screaming, squealing sound called feedback. Jimi Hendrix was known for utilizing feedback in his live playing. And depending on what you're playing on the fretboard, you can change and manipulate the sound of the feedback. On top of that, I had a semi-hollow guitar, which basically just allows more of that to feedback more easily. I had a visceral reaction to this immediately. This wasn't some novelty guitar trick. This was something more. I felt like it was my very soul that was the thing oscillating and getting supercharged, like this was charging me up energetically. So I started going absolutely nuts with the feedback, moving with it, holding my guitar up to the speaker to intensify the sound, even shaking the guitar violently to get the sound to vibrate. This put me in a type of shamanic trance where it felt like I wasn't thinking about anything, like my unconscious mind took over. This is where the alchemy began. I felt the wild, free spirit of Jimi Hendrix inside of me, and there was something about this wailing, screaming, crying feedback sound that just pierced my soul. It's like I could hear the primordial ohm in this sound, the sound of stars being born, the very force that creates the cosmos. And at the same time as this high-minded creative energy, I felt something totally primal and animalistic. I perceived myself as some kind of cosmic ape creature, stuck in the middle of an atemporal Ouroboros, stuck somewhere between Neolithic caveman and starfaring future humanity. With this sense of evolution and deep time that I was experiencing during this trip, it may have well as been happening at the same time. In the grand scheme of things, going from Neolithic caveman to sending spaceships to the moon was in the blink of an eye. So in my perspective during this part of the trip, it felt like it was actually just happening at the same time. This goes back to one of those core principles of alchemy, which is the union of opposites. You know, I mentioned this feeling of feeling this creative force, this creative energy of the cosmos. Well, the opposite was true at the same time. There was an equally powerful, destructive force that I was feeling, with this sense of chaos and abandonment that felt like I was channeling the force of the hand of some angry god. But it didn't seem like a bad thing. It felt like a necessary part of the cycle of birth and death, creation and destruction. In Hindu spirituality, the god Shiva has a trident, and this represents that kind of power where destruction is seen as a necessary part of the cycle of creation, and Shiva has this power of destruction. It's seen as a necessary thing because destruction clears the way for new creation. And I couldn't articulate this at that time, but this is how it all felt kind of intuitively while it was happening. And that's a lot to kind of process in the moment, but this is all because I'm recalling it now. I wouldn't have been able to explain it this way while I was in the middle of this psychedelic guitar vortex. As you can imagine, it was really overwhelming to feel myself caught in the middle of all of these cosmic processes. I felt how all these processes were happening through me as some kind of a nexus point. But a lot like my guitar strings, it was taking something very subtle and faint and amplifying it 1,000-fold. It was thanks to the power of electricity, the wonder of electric guitars. It almost felt like wizardry to be able to wield the power of lightning and manipulate it and make it sing and cry and wail in my hands. And about my hands, earlier in the trip I was feeling this sense of evolution. I could sense the turning of the earth and the billions of years that had passed in deep time, and how we were shaped by the evolution of life on Earth. And looking at my hands, I came to a realization that these are ape hands. I was looking at them and I was like, oh my God, these hands evolved to grip the branches of trees and swing around. Previously, I had understood and believed in evolution, but this was a visceral reckoning with that fact and seeing it in the present moment that, oh, we are actually still apes right now. Not in a negative way, but in a beautiful way. We've turned into something more like cosmic apes, caught somewhere in the middle between angel and beast. With this feeling still in mind while I was going apeshit with the guitar, I had another revelation about this, is that as I was playing, on the wooden neck of the guitar, swinging my hands back and forth, I realized, oh, this is the same thing. This is all just monkey business. Here I am swinging on wood once again. And that just fed into this archaic feeling that I was having this whole time. Feeling all of this power, I felt like I was possessed by the spirit of Jimi Hendrix, or whatever spirit possessed him. I had grown up as a fan of his as a young musician, but it wasn't until this experience with LSD that I fully grasped the essence of Jimi Hendrix in the same way that I grasped evolution in a face-on way. And I didn't need to think. I was in just this magical flow state. This experience playing guitar was amazing on its own, but it was really only a small part of this incredible trip that I had, which included this Kundalini awakening experience that changed my life and is what made me dedicated to this whole psychedelic sphere and eventually inspired me to make this YouTube channel. If you want to hear the full trip report, I do have a video that details everything that happened. It's actually one of my oldest videos, so I should probably remake it, but the story is all there, so if I haven't remade it by the time you watch this, just keep that in mind. So reflecting on Terence McKenna's suggestion that LSD and rock and roll of the 1960s was like a failed alchemy, after experiencing it firsthand, I don't think it was a failed alchemy at all. Rather, it was stomped out by the people whose power was threatened by this extremely subversive thing called the free human spirit. But if we listen to the rest of the quote now, you'll see that it ends on a more hopeful note. Whatever this essence is, it can't be destroyed. It'll rise up again like the phoenix with a vengeance. Because if history is a lesson for anything, it's that truth is revealed in time, and the human spirit is an indomitable force no matter the circumstances. So with that, I'll leave you with these words from Terence McKenna.
In the 60s then, LSD was not sufficient, even coupled with rock and roll. It only brought oppression. It was like a failed alchemy. Instead of the dissolving and recrystallizing at a higher and more angelic level, thousands of prisons were built and the entire thing failed. But this spirit is the spirit of life itself, the spirit of novelty itself, and it will not be suppressed for long in any time or place. So now again, it comes.